I was drinking insanely, even when I absolutely did not want to. I knew exactly what was going to happen. I was going to end up in the hospital again on suicide watch. That's where it had taken me. And I was ready to finish the deal. I just wanted the pain to go away. I wanted it to be over. I was a worthless human being. I would look at myself in the mirror and I go, you suck really bad and you need to finish this. The problem was it's 7 o'clock in the morning and the liquor store doesn't open until 9. I'm going to get a gallon of cherry vodka and finish the job.
Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Stories from Real Life. I'm your host, Melvin E. Edwards. Thank you for joining me for the podcast where personal stories can have a global impact. My guest today is Rand Timmerman, the author of A Spiritual Passage. Rand, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Malvin. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So, you've been a Marine, a lawyer, and a thru hiker. Which of those requires the most patience when dealing with other humans?
Well, Marine Corps for sure. You know, in the service, you have intense training. And then I'm a combat Marine from the Vietnam War. And the worst thing that happened to me before I even got there was I went into Marine Corps in March of 1966. And I trained with a training battalion, and I was in a platoon. I was the last man in the last platoon in the last company. So I was always last, except once, and then I was first. But anyway, and so we were in Camp Pendleton after about 6 months of training, very heavily focused on combat training. We knew I was going in the 1st Marine Division, and I was in the 1st Marine Division when I got to Vietnam. And before I got there, the last day at Camp Pendleton, we're shipping out the next day. We're in formation. Sergeant, we've gotten our vaccinations. We're all ready to go. And a sergeant comes out with a clipboard and calls my name, and I march to the front of the battalion, and I stand there, and yes, sir. And he says, you're going on mess duty for 30 days. What? Melvin, it changed my life completely. They all left. I never saw any of those guys, hardly except a couple, ever again. And I spent the next 30 days, believe it or not, in a mess hall from 4 o'clock in the morning until 7 or 8 o'clock at night on a stool peeling potatoes. The pile was 10 feet high when I started at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I usually never got to the bottom of it. But so then I ended up going to Vietnam by myself. Basically, I went with a whole bunch of stragglers is what it ended up being.
All right. So you were peeling potatoes. You talked about being Korean War, and the TV show MASH was about the Korean War. So are you telling me you were in the MASH potato unit? Is that what you're saying?
A good one. No, I was in the Marine Corps going to Vietnam. It was a different war. Actually, Vietnam was a little worse than Korea, although Korea was bad. A lot of people don't know. In World War II, the average combat veterans served about 10 days of combat a year. In Korea, it was around 75 days. In Vietnam, it was 157, I believe. I only know this because I checked it out because I made a presentation at my grandson's school about the Vietnam War. So, you know, there was a lot more violence, so to speak. And my first night in Vietnam, Melvin, it was the monsoon. It's pouring buckets. I came from Okinawa. I flew into Da Nang, where the 1st Marine Air Wing was, and then I had to get to the 1st Marine Division headquarters by hook or by crook, and I get there in the middle of the night, and they assign a PFC to take me around and get my stuff. We went to the armory. I got all my weapons and grenades and everything, all my gear. We go to a transitional tent, and he reaches for the flap to go in, and there's a bang, and all hell breaks loose. The Marines are yelling inside the tent, medic, 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 and so on and so forth. Quite a while goes, they bring the body out. Eventually, everything settles down. I go in the tent because I'm spending the night there, and I sit on the cot, and I'm just listening to these guys. And what had happened was they came out of that field that day. They still have all their weapons. They're leaving Vietnam the next day. They're going home. Now, this is my first night in country, right? What happened was you got your mail in a bundle like this. You get about once a month. So they always, you know, every time if you got a girlfriend, you're going to look for those letters first, right? Well, he found the most recent letter from his girlfriend, opened it up, and it said, Dear John, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I met somebody else. It's been a whirlwind affair. We got married yesterday. And he picked up his pistol, and blew his brains out. And I thought, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? That was just the beginning. So anyway,
All right,
that's
so
one of my
that
little
leads right into my
stories.
next question. So you served in Vietnam, then you went through officer candidate school and JAG training. How did your military experience shape your view of leadership and life in a lasting way?
Well, of course, I was kind of a leader. Yeah, I was in the Boy Scouts. I kind of got trained in that uh, genre or that kind of mindset. My family was full of warriors. My dad was a Mustang pilot in World War II. I had a couple uncles that one of them was at D-Day. Tough guys. They never talked about the war. They made me a Mustang lieutenant in Vietnam because at the end of my tour, lieutenants didn't do well in Vietnam, a position of leadership. And so I made me second lieutenant Mustang, they called it, because you weren't a real lieutenant. You were filling the billet, right? And so I did that job. And then a colonel talked to me the last day and said, you're going to go back, you'll be a corporal again, or you can go to OCS and to basic school and be a real second lieutenant. So I was going to get out in a few months, and I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. So I said, I'll do it. So I went and did all that, and I decided to go in the air wing because they had showers and hot food and a lot of things the infantry didn't have when you were in difficult circumstances. And so I went to Cherry Point where the 1st Marine Air Wing was, and I met an old buddy. He was the officer of the day, and he said, where do you want to go? I got some schools. And I said, I don't know. And he rattled them off. And said, Rhode Island. I said, I've never been to Rhode Island. So I went to the JAG school in Rhode Island, Judge Advocate General. It's where you train legal officers. All the guys there were captains. I'm the only lieutenant, and all I am is a enlisted man who became a lieutenant without an education. These guys got college, they got law school, they're captains because they had to make them captains or they wouldn't stay. They wouldn't do the program, right? And I decided to study, and I mean, we were doing a fair amount of drinking and stuff. That's part of my story. I'm an alcoholic. And I decided to focus on it, and I ended up being the class honor man of the whole class of 100, which really kind of ticked them off. But, and then I went back and they made me, so when I went back to 1st Marine Air Wing, they made me defense counsel. And I got a couple guys got acquitted. One of them was for sleeping on watch, which in the Marine Corps, that was a big no-no. That's Leavenworth for a couple of years, and you're dishonorably discharged. And they acquitted him. So then they made me a prosecutor. That's how that works, right? And then I ended up keep sending me down to Roosevelt Roads, which is a naval station on Puerto Rico that we had, and I was doing Article 32s down there. And I asked one of my buddies, the guy that was the adjutant, who was made, he's the guy who tells people where to go, basically. And I said, how come I'm not going back to Vietnam? Because I'd be on the list. He'd send me down there. I'd come back. I'd be down the list. And he goes, you son of a gun. Why do you think I'm sending you down there? Because if you go back to Vietnam, you get killed. So did I become a leader out of all that? I don't know. I sure as heck matured a lot. I went from a country boy. They went to school with a lot of kids, and most of the boys had manure on their boots. It was a very rural, very poor area, to being a leader. That's what the Marine Corps did for me, and it gave me a career because I had no idea what I was good at. I didn't even know what I was good at. It turned out I was pretty good at that. So I did 4 decades as a attorney, self-employed. I always had people working for me. I think the most I ever had was 25, 26, something like that. I had a great legal career, although, alcohol, I knew alcohol was going to be a problem. I came back with PTSD. We didn't even call it that then. They called it combat fatigue or whatever, and I had horrible nightmares. And my brother went to Vietnam too. He was actually there before me. I went to college for 3 semesters. Ronnie he enlisted in the Army, and he went to Vietnam, and he ended up doing 2 tours. He was a machine gunner on a helicopter. I did that for a while too, but he was down in the middle in Chu Lai, in that area, in the middle of Vietnam. I was in I Corps, which is the northernmost part of Vietnam. And in fact, I was at Khe Sanh and other bases right on the border, the northern border, where there was fighting every single day because they didn't want us there. They were really ticked off that we were there. So, we both made it. We both saw a lot of stuff that was not good. Ronnie was always spiritual. I was not. I lost it. I was probably an agnostic, but in Vietnam I became an atheist because I couldn't believe what was happening. I could not believe what was happening. I felt like most of the guys I was were better than me. Most of them were bigger. I'm only 5'8". Being small in combat is a good thing. It's an asset, really. Uh, so we saw a lot of, and I thought there can't possibly be a God. I'd be dying. These guys would be living. This doesn't make any sense. But it filled me with rage, which was a good thing. I didn't even know how angry I could get. Somebody trying to kill me really pissed me off.
So let's talk about your alcoholism. I don't know if the rage led you to that. So you've been pretty open about your recovery. At what point did you come to realize that you had to change your relationship with alcohol? And what was your first step into making that change?
All right, well, how do you know you have a problem with alcohol? For me, it was 13. I was 13 years old. I'm in this my dad's paralyzed with polio from the waist down. He spent a year in the hospital, 8 months in an iron lung. It changed our whole trajectory. So we are the poorest family in a very poor town. And so at 13, I go to my first party. I've got acne, right? I'm 90 pounds. I'm 5'8", 13 years old. I have clothes with patches on them. I have shoes with holes in the bottom of them, and I'm not worthy, right? And I get invited to this party with another kid that was not a whole lot better off than we were. And I found a bottle of Jim Beam in the basement. We were playing hide and seek. And I took that first mouthful, sipping it, and I got, how can anybody drink this stuff? But then it went down me. I mean, it was like a wave of warmth went down me. And I grew, man. I was 6'4". I was Clint Eastwood. I was tough. I was good looking. I was sexy. I was funny. I was happy, and it just gave me that. And of course, I crawled home drunker than a skunk. And I didn't get sick. Next morning, I got up and I went upstairs because I knew my dad. I knew I had to tell my dad, but I stood way back because when he got angry, things would happen. And I told him, and all he said was, well, Butch, my friend David's in the hospital. Don't ever do that again. And my brain was like, I can't wait. So, Melvin, I knew at 13 years old, it could be a problem. To the point where I actually made a decision, I'm never going to do drugs. And I never did drugs, not even marijuana, because I knew I liked it too much. But for a long time, money, poverty, I didn't drink much for years and years and years. But I'd get drunk sometimes when I shouldn't, on weekends and that kind of stuff. But I always knew I had a problem. And today we know that it's a disease, right? 1956, the American Medical Association said it's a disease. And the reason it is because alcoholics metabolize alcohol differently than normal people. See, I thought my problem was I just didn't have enough willpower at the end when it took over. Latin for alcohol is spiritus. Well, spiritus became my God at the end, in my late 50s, early 60s. And I couldn't control it anymore. It's because you create acetone. Normal drinker starts creating acetone when they're metabolizing drinking. They stop because they don't like that feeling. It makes an alcoholic thirstier, and we create more and more and more. And that's why, 4 days later, I'm going to the hospital. I'm still drinking because I can't stop. That's why. It wasn't a moral problem. It's a physical problem. It's an obsession problem of the mind. And for me, I had to get involved in a program that believed I'm powerless over alcohol, totally. So I need a power. It's got to be outside of me, right? And it's got to be greater than me. So we call it a higher power. And I began to get some spirituality because I was with a whole bunch of people who went through this program and their whole lives changed. It was amazing. It was a miracle. I see miracles every day. And I got a good sponsor, and he took me through the 12-step program, and changed my whole life. And after about 6 months, I actually could have a day or two I could think about I wouldn't think about drinking. That's a miracle for an alcoholic at 67 years old. And then right after that, after I had finished the program, as far as doing the steps, I had a guy ask me to be a sponsor. And I'm like, after a meeting, 'cause I go to a meeting every day still, sometimes two. And I work with guys every day. But my first guy, I only had like 13 months. And he goes, will you be my sponsor? And I go, come tomorrow and we'll talk about it. Because I'm thinking, I'm not ready. I'm totally convinced, Melvin, I am not ready. So I go talk to my sponsor, Billy, and Billy's in the book that I wrote about hiking the Appalachian Trail because I talk about this, how I recovered. And because I was sure he was going to tell me you're not ready. And so I tell him what happened. He said, good, Rand, go for it. I said, Billy, you're supposed to tell me I'm not ready. He go, oh, you're ready, Rand. You got a lot of bad experience, ton. And now you got some good experience. And you have a relationship with a higher power that will guide you through this process with other men. And that's what happened. And today I have joy.
So, in terms of rock bottom moments or turning points in your life, what one stands out as the moment you firmly committed to recovery?
I was in the program for 3.5 years and I could not stay sober. I could stay sober for 95 to 100 days just by being with a group of people who weren't drinking, but I was not becoming a part of the group. I'm just there. And that didn't work because I wasn't doing what they were doing. I wasn't trying to make a connection with a higher power that could help me stay sober. And what happened was, at the end, I was drinking insanely, even when I absolutely did not want to. I knew exactly what was going to happen. I was going to end up in the hospital again on suicide watch. That's where it had taken me to. And I was ready to finish the deal. I just wanted the pain to go away. I wanted it to be over. I was a worthless human being. I would look at myself in the mirror and I go, you suck really bad. And you need to finish this. The problem was, it's 7 o'clock in the morning and the liquor store doesn't open until 9. I'm going to get a gallon of cherry vodka and finish the job. I've been on a 10-day air vodka vacation. I call it air vodka because all I did was drink, pass out, and breathe. Come to, repeat. And I went and sat on a guy's front step because you got to wait 2 hours, right? And Billy Cook came out, took one look at me, walked over, sat down next to me. He said, I know you. You're just like me. Turned out he had 30 years of sobriety in this anonymous program that I've been in now for 15 years. And he took me to the hospital and spent the whole day with me. That was the turning point. He knew exactly how to help me do the program and not drink again. No guarantees. I had to do all the work. Then when he got me out of detox 4 days later, this is probably the real key turning point. And we went to a meeting, and I went to a meeting every day with him for a year after that. We went to the first meeting together, and after the meeting, we're standing in the parking lot. Now, he'd spent the whole day with me in the hospital 5 days before that. In the emergency room, I'm on the gurney with the tubes. He's sitting in a chair, and he knows I don't believe in God. I mean, I've given him all my excuses, all my manure. I poured it right on top of him, poor guy. So that night, out of there, and after the meeting, and he looks at me and goes, Rand, you need to pray to that God you don't believe in, or you will get drunk again. And I started crying. I'm 68 years old. I don't know how to pray. I have no clue. He taught me how to pray that night. We prayed in the parking lot on our knees. And after that, I did everything he told me. And I have been praying every morning, pretty much the same prayer that he taught me, not all at the same time, and I've never picked up a drink again. That's a miracle, Melvin, for a guy like me.
That's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So then at age 72, you and your 71-year-old brother embarked on a full Appalachian Trail hike. 2,190 miles, 600 mountains. What sparked the idea to do that in your 70s?
Okay, that's a great question. My brother came back from it. Edie caused that to happen, Ronnie's wife. It was her fault because she died, actually. Ronnie came back from Vietnam after I did. In fact, I was in college and I was married with 2 kids and trying to turn my life around. And luckily I was really busy and I didn't have any money. So, but anyway, and Ronnie was always a spiritual man. He came back and our mother's best friend was Edie. She's 14 years older than Ronnie. They're running around. She's wearing a mini skirt, red cowboy boots. They're going line dancing. I can see my brother's falling in love. She's divorced with 7 kids. He marries her. They move to Utah. They become Mormons. My brother becomes a bishop in the Mormon church. And he's doing funerals and weddings and church services. And when Edie got then what happened was Edie got a stroke in 2011. And it was a bad one. Put her in a wheelchair. And then she had a whole bunch more. It never got better. It got worse. And Ronnie would not let anybody help. He did it all with her by himself. So she passed November 17th, 2017. I went out to see him in January of 2018. I could tell that he was hurting real bad. And I went out, we were hiking in Utah. We were both very active our whole adult lives. I ran 26 marathons, did a bunch of cross-country ski races in the wintertime. And I was a weekend, warrior like that with some buddies. And Ronnie was a very fit guy, and he was always hiking in Utah and stuff like that. We only saw each other about once a year. So I go out there and I'm hiking with him in St. George in Utah. It's beautiful. And I go, "What are you gonna do, bro? You gotta do something." And he said, "I'm gonna hike the Appalachian Trail." And I had hiked parts of it. And through my adult years, I would take off on weekends and just go in the mountains and hike and camp by myself. And it's just kind of that grunt thing that you do and I knew how hard it was. I mean, I knew it was incredible, challenging. And I said, well, that's crazy. And, you could, like you said, you go over 600, there's 465,000, so 500,000 feet of elevation changes in the Appalachian Mountains. That is, yeah, it's a real challenge. About 3 million people hike in the Appalachian Trails every year. 3,000 of them try to go the whole way. 17% of them make it. So like 500 people a year on average actually do it. And they're not in their 70s. That's for sure. And we had a lot of challenges. It was so anyway, I said, "When are you going to go?" And he said, "March 22nd. Well, that's crazy. "Well, I'll go with you." "You will?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll go with you." I wasn't going to let him do it alone. I mean, so you got two combat veterans, both got a lot of challenges. We both did well. He was a commercial pilot after he got out of service. I became a lawyer. I had a great career as a lawyer. My drinking didn't become a real problem till the end. And now I'd been sober 4 years. So I was there for my brother because I had gotten sober. And we started out first day. I got pictures in the book. I did a book about it called, like you said, A Spiritual Passage. It's got 500 beautiful pictures, and we did it in journal format because Ronnie wrote a journal and I wrote a journal. I just put them together, and it describes where we went each day from where to where and how many miles it was, and I got pictures so somebody could vicariously do the hike by reading the book, and just they can see what it looked like. If they had a map, they could see where we went, and then in every other chapter, so I talked about my journey into sobriety and about Billy and how I did the steps, basically. And then Ronnie was spiritual to begin with. We had some pretty spiritual situations on the trail, and I wrote about some of those too. So it was amazing, amazing experience. I did not think we could do it. I never told my brother that. When I did the first book just for family, right? I didn't get a publisher or anything like that, because I thought it was something kind of unique and it'd be great for our grandchildren and things like that. Well, the first time my brother read it, he said, "You thought we weren't going to make it?" Because I wrote in there 2 weeks max. I figured 2 weeks max, that would be it. But I was wrong.
All right, so in your book, you describe falling, broken poles, extreme weather, and intense fatigue. Was there a moment on the trail, sort of like you just mentioned, when you thought, I may not make this? And then how did you respond to that?
Wow, yes, there was. And so we were in the Smokies. Ronnie went through the Smoky Mountains from the south, and I went from the north. We switched. Normally he would go south and I would go north. We had two vehicles, so we would flip-flop, right? I like to brag I slept in a tent every night on the Appalachian Trail, which is true, but my truck was pretty much right next to me. So we had all our food and our supplies in there. And so what we did was if we're on the trail on a dirt road, sometimes they were really bad roads, right? Then in the morning, Ronnie would drive in his car. He would go down the mountain in a valley, go up to the next road that crossed the trail, go up there, park, hike south. I would go north, and then he would take my truck, come around, and come back to where I was on the trail. And then we'd just stay there. And then next day we'd do the same thing, repeat. There are a lot of places where you can't do that, so you have to carry a full pack. We averaged 11 miles a day in the mountains, hiking from daylight to 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and I fell every single day, usually in the afternoon when I was really tired, and one leg would bounce off the other one, and I'd go flying. But my worst and my best experience in a way was I'm in the Smokies, I'm going south, I'm between um, Clingman's Dome and Fontana Dam, which is right on the edge of Georgia. So I'm in that section, and it's very high, it's very narrow, and I pitched my tent at dusk on the trail because it was 20 feet wide, and both sides it went straight down. I mean, literally straight down for hundreds, if not thousands of feet. I'm standing there taking a leak, looking down, and I realized there's trees behind me. So what happened was storms came up. It was pouring rain. I get in the tent. It's getting dark, and the winds came up. And the valley on the south side was wide, and then it came narrow right up to where I was, and then the winds were coming up. It sounded like freight trains. I mean, literally freight trains coming right at me. Sometimes they go to the right, sometimes the left, and then they'd go right over me. Now, I had a very good mountaineer type tent with 2 rod poles to hold it up. And Ronnie said, "Were you holding on to the rods?" And I said, "No, I was pushing down as hard as I could on the stakes with my hands and my feet because I felt like I was in a body bag. And the wind was so strong that tent would be going, hitting me on my back. And I'm like, you're a dead man. There's no way you're going to hold on. And I was praying to God. I'm like, hey, big guy, I've been a pretty good boy here these last few years. And I think I'm doing some of your work. You know what I mean? And really, I don't want to die. But if that's the plan, I accept it. I will accept it. And I honestly didn't think I was going to survive that. And then just as it started getting light, it stopped. The wind slowly abated. And then I got out of the tent at daylight. I always turned my phone on. And I had 2 guys that I was been working with that would call me every morning and just check in, you staying sober and that kind of stuff. And one of them goes, "You okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm okay. Why?" And he said, "Well, I've been watching the weather. There's really bad weather where you are." He said, "There was a tornado." And I said, "Well, I didn't see any tornadoes, but it was bad." But I tell you what, Melvin, for most of that night, I felt for sure I was not going to make it. Yeah. But nobody was shooting at me, so that's
That's good. That's a good thing. So your trail name out there was Rambo, a playful nod to your brother's attitude indicator. So how did adopting a trail name and identity affect your experience on the trail?
okay. Well, everybody does trail name. So you don't ever know anybody's real names. I have pictures of people in there. I wrote down trail names because people were very innovative and creative with the trail names that they came up with. And Ronnie was very specific in his journal about what we did, where we went, all that kind of stuff. And then he always said, "Thank God for my family." But I was more about writing down trail names, things that happened. I knew, Melvin, that I was never going to walk that way again. So when I would get tired and stuff, I would go, "Rand, you're never going to be here again. Look around you, see and some days I would take 40 or 50 pictures. I'd come around a bend and I go, oh my God, that's so beautiful, and take pictures. So my attitude and everything was different than Ronnie's. And then the trail. So one night, we were all usually too tired to talk much at night. Just eat and kind of go to bed, basically. And one night, my brother goes, "There are a lot of weird people out here." And I said, "Yeah, bro, we're weird." He goes, "We're not weird, bro. We're not weird." And I said, "Yeah, we are. Normal people don't do this. This is insane." Well, he picked attitude indicator because that's an instrument on an airplane that tells you what the airplane's pitch and yaw is in relationship to the horizon. So, and that's what he's doing. He's trying to fly level, right? He's filled with grief. He's trying to get back to. And so he picked that name, and then he picked my name, Rambo, which kind of, it's a play on words like Rambo, the movie, Sylvester Stallone and all that. So we were in the Whites, actually. We were in New Hampshire, and I'm going north, and he's going south. And I'm not seeing people. I mean, it's that 3,000, we're down to not many people at all. And that day I met couple people, a man and a woman, at least twice, maybe even 3 times. And each time I go, "My name is Rambo. What's yours?" That way they would tell me their trail name. I put it in my journal. And they go, oh, Rambo, yeah, we ran into your brother, attitude indicator. And I go, yeah, yeah. And he said, oh, can I have my picture with you? And he put their arm around me, the guy, I thought you'd be bigger. And then the women are like this, and that happened a couple times that day. And I said, that's really weird, but it's kind of fun. So that night we're eating, and I go, Ron, something strange is going on. People were treating me kind of weird today. What was that? And I said, well, and I kind of told him, and I said, come on, bro, you want to tell me something? No, 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 I don't want, no. Well, okay. I told them that you are the guy that the movie Rambo was about. I said,
Disappointed when
don't
they
do
saw
it.
you were 5'8".
Yeah. Because I don't look like, I mean, we both lost 35 pounds. I'm 5'8". I'm 150, 55 pounds again. I'm lower than my high school weight, for crying out loud. It was very, we look like, I don't know, Auschwitz survivors or something. But yeah, that was funny as heck. Don't do that. You're going to get me killed. I killed Rambo.
So the trail gave you plenty of time for reflection and solitude. What unexpected insight or truth emerged for you while you were out there walking hour after?
What insights?
What reflection or, yeah, what insight or truth?
Well, probably the biggest one is, I mean, we're in our 70s. We shouldn't even be doing this. I realized that I felt like my higher power was giving me the fortitude and the strength that I needed to do this for a reason, right? That it wasn't so much about me and Ronnie. It was more about setting a goal or a standard that you don't have to live out your life in fear or worry. All my friends are either dead, especially my veteran friends, or they're sitting home on the couch waiting to die. I'm 80 years old. I still walk 7, 8 miles a day. I go to 1 or 2 meetings a day to hear people talk about not drinking alcohol and spirituality. And then I talk to guys about those very same things, that they don't have to drink again either. And here's how we do it, right? And I believe that God let me do this thing so that it would be be an inspiration for people to do. Hey, I can do that too. Now, I'm not saying everybody in their 70s should go hike the Appalachian Trail. That's not the point at all. The point is that we turn our life over to higher power. We can do things that we can't even hardly imagine if we can just get out of ourselves and help somebody else out, especially. And there's a lot of older people. I'm at that age now where, and they just sit home. And on the other hand, there's people, I know an older lady that has a walker, oxygen bottle. She's always smiling. She makes herself go out every day. She goes to things, volunteer things, and she's always smiling and happy. That's the way we should be, right? So that's what I got out of it, was the whole idea, this is bigger than me. I'm not that great. And there's nothing special about me, really. God gave me a hell of a body. Thank God for that. I can do things that are a little unusual, but it's more about the journey. In our program, it says we're on the road to happy destiny. A lot of people think the destiny is what it's all about, but it's not. That's the name of the road of happy destiny. The road is the happy destiny, right? Not the end. It's the road. And that's what we're working on.
All right,
If
so
that makes any sense.
you talked about being military, law, and marathons. After all those years of achievement, what does success look like to you now at this stage of your life?
Well, writing books, for one thing. Yeah. I got a lot of pleasure out of writing this book. I've written a lot of other books. I did get a publisher. So, this is my baby. This is the one that will help people the most. I've actually given it away to people that were struggling, didn't have a whole lot of money, and I've gotten some pretty good feedback. Actually, a host of a podcast, and I'm not going to say who it was, because after we were done, he starts telling me about his father, who was in law enforcement and had a real serious drinking problem. And I said, well, tell you what, I'll send him the book and I'll autograph it if you give me his address. He said, okay. Well, I never heard from him for a while. And then finally he sent a message with the address, and he said, don't say a word about me. He didn't want his father to know. So I sent it out I just wrote in it, I hope you're doing well, happy trails, and signed my name to it and sent it to him. And I didn't hear anything for a couple months, and then I got an email, and it was very kind of concise, but he said, I got your book. I have no idea why you sent it to me, but I decided to take a different path. That says it all right there. Take a different path.
For people who are battling addiction or dealing with grief or some other major life transition, what three practical actions would you recommend to them?
Well, one is professional help, right? There are tremendous. I have a lot of people that are dealing with grief, and there's all kinds of grief groups that you can go to. A lot of people that have addictions also have other mental health issues, and so we have no claim to fame on this thing. You may need help from professional people for all kinds of things, medical, physical, mental health issues. Take advantage of all that. But, read books, watch podcasts about people that do inspiring things and feel their joy and their love of life. Even when I did the whole Appalachian Trail with an artificial knee and a right leg that's a half inch shorter than the left. Yeah, our son hiked with us for a couple of weeks, and a couple of years after we did the hike and I wrote the first book, he actually showed me the video. He was showing videos of what we had been hiking, and there was this guy limping, and I go, "Who's that?" This guy's got a real bad limp, and he goes, "That's you." I didn't realize how bad it was,
But you
but
made it through.
yeah, I made it through.
So you've had decades of life, work, sport, struggle, and transformation. If you could go back and give your younger self one question to ask, one piece of advice, what would it be?
I wouldn't change a thing. I made all the mistakes you can make. I'm on my fourth marriage, 25 years. I had relationship problems. I had mental health problems. I had all kinds of problems. I also had a determination, a drive to succeed and not be poor. I had a real resentment about poverty. I grew up with that. So I was driven to succeed on almost every level. The only thing I never succeeded at was the alcohol until I took a different path. But that's a great question too, Melvin. About 5 years ago, so I'm 70 or 74. I'm working with a guy. We're doing his amends step. We say a little prayer, and then or not his amends, but it's a confessional thing, and he's telling me his wrongs, right? It's kind of a heavy duty. If you talk about the things that you did wrong and the mistakes that you made and the things that were harmful to other people, then you can turn them over to God. We believe that you have to tell another man, and then you'll pray about it and turn it over to God, and then you'll be a new man. You'll be transformed, and that's called your bad experience, right? So we were doing that with a guy, and he's shaking and everything, and I said, "How do you feel?" And he said, "I feel nervous, Rand. How do you feel?" I said, "I feel joy." That we're doing this thing. And then afterwards he goes, if you could go back, because I told him some of my story. That's how that works. He tells me some of the bad stuff he did. I tell him, and he said, if you could go back like 55, would you go back? I go, I wouldn't change a thing because I wouldn't have the bad experience that I have that I can share, right? I'm no better than you. I was just as screwed up as any other human being could be. But I worked through it. I took a different path in the end. And I wouldn't know what I know now. I wouldn't be able to help you as much as I can help you. So anyway, that's my answer. I wouldn't change a damn thing. Excuse my French.
Okay, and as a final question today, one that I ask all my guests, what one piece of advice would you like to leave for the listeners? It could be on any topic you want it to be.
Don't ever give up. Try to make a connection with a higher power and feel joy. We can live a better life if we're struggling, no matter what it is. My sponsor was really sick at the end of his life. They had to chop off his leg. And he had a point where he was depressed. And I had held his hand in the hospital and said, Billy, I'm going to tell you the same things you told me. You have a higher power. God's got a plan for us. We don't know what it is, but he loves us. He wants what's best for us. We have to accept it. We have to have faith in a higher power. And when we just trudged through it. And he did. After that, he went back to being his old self, and he had a pretty good 2 years, and then he died real quick, thank God. He didn't suffer after that. But yeah, that's it, Melvin.
Okay, that's a sad but appropriate way to end this episode. Our guest today has been Rand Timmerman. Rand, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So please go to my website at podcastreallife.com for more information about my guest and the things we discussed today, including a link to his book, A Spiritual Passage. That's it for today's episode of Stories from Real Life. Join us again next time for another chance to learn from each other. Until then, don't forget to shine your light wherever you go.